All right, let's dive right into this explainer on Dr. Anna Lembke's fascinating research. If you've ever found yourself wondering why it is just so incredibly hard to get things done sometimes, well, the answer actually comes down to a single, incredibly powerful chemical in your brain, dopamine. Today, we're going to explore how dopamine practically dictates the entire quality of your life, based on the insights from her book, Dopamine Nation. We'll look at the exact science behind why our modern world drains our drive and exactly what we can do to reclaim our motivation.
It's a complete paradox, right? I mean, we live in this age of unbelievable abundance. We've got endless entertainment, instant food delivery, total comfort literally at our fingertips. But somehow, despite having all of this instant pleasure readily available, so many of us feel chronically anxious, distracted, and just completely unmotivated. Why is it that the easier life gets, the harder it is to find the drive to do the hard things? Well, to figure out this modern fatigue, we've got to look under the hood at how our brain's reward center actually works.
And that starts with understanding what Dr. Lemke calls the feel-good baseline. Think of this as the optimal resting level of dopamine in your brain. When you're cruising above this baseline, life is great. You feel joyful, you're naturally driven to learn, to grow, and just get stuff done. But the very second your dopamine drops below that line, that focus and joy absolutely vanish. You get anxious, and finding the motivation to do even the simplest tasks turns into a massive struggle.
To really show you the stakes here, researchers actually took mice in clinical studies and completely depleted their dopamine levels. The results were honestly terrifying. These mice completely lost the motivation to eat food that was sitting directly in front of them, and they eventually starved to death. Literally, without that baseline dopamine, you lose the will to survive, even when the reward requires basically zero effort. So dopamine isn't just about feeling happy, it is the fundamental fuel for action.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. The pleasure-pain seesaw. Imagine a literal seesaw inside your mind. When you go after a quick hit of pleasure, checking your phone for messages, cracking open a sugary soda, mindlessly scrolling TikTok, you're pressing down hard on the pleasure side. But your brain always wants balance. So every single time you chase that cheap pleasure, your brain essentially hires these invisible gremlins to jump onto the pain side to level things out.
The core neurobiological rule here is super simple, but kind of brutal. When you pursue pleasure, you get pain. Because we live in this world of incredibly easy abundance, we're relentlessly mashing that pleasure button. We're just stacking more and more of those gremlins onto the pain side of the seesaw. And when that quick pleasure inevitably fades, those heavy gremlins are still sitting there, crashing your dopamine way below your baseline. Honestly, this dynamic perfectly explains why rich countries, which have the easiest access to constant pleasure, are seeing absolutely skyrocketing rates of depression and physical pain.
So how do we fix this? Let's look at 2 long-term solutions to reset your brain. First up, pursuing pain. Dr. Lemke puts it perfectly here. Pressing on the pain side of the balance can lead to its opposite, pleasure. It sounds crazy, but by voluntarily pursuing intermittent, healthy pain, you actually startle those gremlins camping out on the pain side. You force them to jump over to the pleasure side to balance things out. Unlike those cheap thrills, the dopamine hit you get from enduring healthy pain is indirect and it lasts way longer.
The data on this is just wild. One way to pursue this healthy pain is to literally turn down the temperature. Plunging into an ice bath or taking a cold shower for a few minutes triggers this massive, gradual 200% spike in dopamine. Guys, mathematically, that is equivalent to the dopamine rise from snorting cocaine. But the massive difference is, because it's triggered by pain, you completely avoid that devastating crash and deficit afterward. Vigorous exercise does a very similar thing, giving you a sustained 100 to 200% dopamine boost. A third way to embrace the pain is to briefly starve those gremlins through intermittent fasting. By only consuming water and electrolytes for about 16 to 20 hours a day, you give your body a massive break from digestion. It's a form of healthy physical stress. And paradoxically, at the tail end of that fast, your energy levels just soar. Your dopamine resets, so when you finally do eat incredibly simple, healthy foods, like a piece of broccoli or some blueberries, will suddenly taste absolutely amazing.
Now, if pursuing physical pain isn't really your thing, we have solution 2, the dopamine fast.
This is all about abstaining. It means intentionally avoiding those massive dopamine spikes, so the gremlins finally pack up and leave the pain side, letting your brain reset to its natural feel-good baseline. And the magic number for this reset? 30. If there is a compulsive behavior messing up your life, you have to commit to cutting it out for exactly 30 days. It doesn't matter if it's reading romance novels late into the night like Dr. Lemke did,
obsessively checking stock prices, scrolling Twitter, or eating fast food. 30 full days is the absolute minimum time required for your withdrawal symptoms to fade and for your brain's reward circuits to fully reboot.
Now, I know, going 30 days without your favorite crutch sounds incredibly tough. To help you actually get through those challenging weeks, Dr. Lembke created the dopamine framework. Let's walk through these steps so you can start applying this today.
Starting with D for data, you've got to face the hard facts of your behavior. Tracking your habits can literally shock you into action. Let's say you're hooked on sugary sodas. You collect the data and realize, wow, I am consuming 700 grams of sugar a week. That translates to ingesting a staggering 80 pounds of sugar every single year. Seeing that cold, hard data sparks this profound feeling of disgust, which is honestly exactly the initial motivation you need to kick off your 30-day fast.
Next up, O for objective and P for problem. This is where you reflect on how far off track things have gotten. See, your original objective was probably pretty innocent, right? Maybe you started smoking weed to take the edge off some mild anxiety, or you grabbed an energy drink just to cure a little boredom. But the problem is that these addictive behaviors eventually enslave you. You hit a point where you need the substance just to feel normal. And worse, these compulsions slowly and methodically erode your personal relationships, leading to isolation and just constant conflict.
During the fast itself, M is for mindfulness. Look, when that intense craving hits, and it will, don't try to just muscle through it with pure willpower. Instead, use that urge as a trigger to get super curious. Notice where the physical impulse is actually coming from in your body. How does it physically feel? By shifting into this state of observation and curiosity, you completely change your relationship with craving. It literally turns the torture of abstaining into this fascinating mindful experiment. Which brings us to I for insight. This happens naturally when you step away from your drug of choice. There's a brilliant example in the book. Dr. Lembke had a patient who abstained from weed, and on day 2, she physically threw up. She told Dr. Lembke, "I never throw up. That's when I realized I was withdrawing." That awful moment was the exact insight she needed. It was undeniable proof that she was deeply addicted, and that realization pushed her right through the rest of the fast.
Okay, so what happens on day 31? That's N for next steps. To make the fasting period bearable, you need to create a very specific, strict plan for how you might enjoy the behavior in moderation once the 30 days are up. Having that reward to look forward to really keeps you going. So, if you're abstaining from soda, your next step plan might be allowing yourself just one single soda on Sunday afternoons while watching sports. It's all about moving from pure compulsion to intentional choice.
And finally, E is for experiment. This is where the rubber meets the road. After your fast, you test out your moderation plan. But you have to be honest with yourself and monitor it closely. If you experiment with that one Sunday soda, but immediately relapse into drinking a 6-pack a day, well, you have to face reality. You have to admit the addiction is just too powerful to moderate. And at that point, you must resolve to stop the behavior for good, just like an alcoholic who knows they simply cannot take a single drink. Ultimately, if you're ready to escape this modern malaise, if you're sick of not getting pleasure from simple things, and you want your baseline joy and motivation back, you have a very clear choice to make. You can either start voluntarily pursuing healthy pain through cold exposure, rigorous exercise, and fasting, or you need to strictly abstain from your highly pleasurable compulsive behaviors using the 30-day dopamine fast. Both of these paths will absolutely reset your pleasure-pain balance. So, armed with the actual neurobiology, you now know exactly why you feel unmotivated and, more importantly, exactly how to fix it. The only question left is this: what specific 30-day challenge are you willing to take on today? In a world that's perfectly engineered to keep us all comfortably numb, what cheap pleasure are you going to drop to finally reclaim your extraordinary drive? Pick your challenge, and let's start resetting that dopamine baseline right now.